Andrew, I blame you for this, okay? I just want to say I didn't want to watch this movie, and then you told me multiple times, oh, do you want to review this? Do you want to review this? And then I went, fine, I'll review this.
We're gonna do the Captain America movies. Of course, we're gonna review
I
this one.
wasted 2 hours of my time watching this movie. I
Wow.
hated this movie, and here's why. I got Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of A Lost Plot, the podcast by storytellers for storytellers so that we can tell better stories ourselves. As always, I'm your host, Maverick, and today we have back with us two of our favorite co-hosts. That's right, today we have both Avalon and Andrew to review the most recent release in the Marvel Universe, the movie everyone has been waiting for years and decades. It is not Captain America 1, 2, or 3. No, we're talking about Captain America Brave New World. The screenplay was by Rob Edwards, Malcolm Spellman, Dallin Moosin, Julius Onah, and Peter Glantz. Three of those people also were part of the original story making for this film, and it was directed by Julius Onah. Yeah. So initial thoughts. Let's get into it. Avalon, what are your thoughts on Captain America Brave New World?
So I will say I went at this movie with low expectations. I mean, Marvel as of late has not been doing stellar. They have not been doing great, and I didn't hear even though didn't look up reviews on the movie, I did hear disparaging things through the grapevine, rumors. So I'll say this movie exceeded some of my expectations in some ways. It wasn't a perfect movie, but I do see this movie as a step up from some of the most recent Marvel stuff we've gotten as of late.
Okay.
I see it as an improvement on some themes and certain ideas that we've been getting. So in some ways, it could be seen as a hopeful for things to come, but it also could be a false hope, and we may get garbage. We'll see. And as I said, it's not a perfect movie, but I gave it a 5.2.
Okay. There you go. Cool. Andrew, what were your thoughts when you first watched this film?
And here it comes.
I've seen Paw Patrol episodes with more complex storylines.
This explains a lot.
There was a lot going on and yet nothing at all. I think this movie was an attempt at greatness, but fell flat on its face. And I'll explain that later on. Since Avalon gave his review, I gave it a 1.7.
Wow.
And this movie, to me, going into it, I recognized the fact that I had very, very low expectations for this movie. And there were some points in the movie where I thought, oh, maybe this could go a certain way, and it didn't. And so overall, I did scrutinize myself, and I took the quiz 3 separate times. Each time I got a 1.7, a 1.8, and a 1.6. So, I put the 1.7 in there because that was right in the middle. And we'll get into it more. But I think that this movie just was all over the place, and yeah.
What'd you give it, Maverick?
So, Andrew, I blame you for this, okay? I just want to say I didn't want to watch this movie, and then you told me multiple times, oh, do you want to review this? Do you want to review this? And then I went, fine, I'll review this.
We're going to do the Captain America movies. Of course we're going to review this one.
Wasted 2 hours of my time watching this movie. I hated this movie, and here's why. I got a 0.9.
Wow.
Yo, that's insane.
I thought Andrew was going to give the lowest score. I am legitimately surprised.
Yeah, I think this movie is garbage, and I spent a lot of time thinking about exactly why this movie should go down in history as something that should never be watched again.
Yep.
Now, that being said, we'll get into that today if you're interested at all in hearing why I am absolutely peeved you should keep listening. All right, let's get into it. So,
Now, I just want to preface this with I'd probably be as pissed as Maverick if I didn't get a date out of this. So
that's insane. Hey, this podcast is leading to new things in Andrew's life.
Wow. I feel like this podcast is turning into something where we roast each other and try to one-up each other.
It's turning into Andrew trying to get a new girlfriend.
that's not
That's
true.
what it's turning into.
You think
All right.
this is my card? I go up to a girl, yo, I'm on this podcast. We get like maybe 100 listeners a month.
It actually is more than that, but we'll take that.
My bad, it's 110.
Okay. Go screw yourself.
So your chances are higher, Andrew.
Maybe she listens.
She will after this. No. So I am totally derailed right now. Andrew,
Yes.
what is this movie about for people who are not familiar and or just want to know what goes on but don't actually want to watch this movie?
All right. So I'm going to preface this overview of the movie by saying I'm going to try to put all the necessary information in here so you don't actually have to go see this movie to get what you need to out of it. This movie picks up where Falcon and the Winter Soldier TV show left off, with Falcon taking on the mantle of Captain America and kind of pseudo working for the U.S. government. And the current president at the beginning of this movie is Everett Ross, or Thunderbolt Ross. The movie opens up with Wilson and now the new Falcon, Joaquin Torres, going on a mission and trying to recruit some package that you are unaware of what it is at the moment. After retrieving the package, they are invited to the White House, and they go to this kind of formal gathering with the president and several other leaders of other nations around the globe. You find out that during the Eternals movie, the celestial being ends up creating adamantium from its remains. And so all the nations around the planet are rushing to get at this new resource, and Everett Ross is trying to make a treaty so that everyone can have at this without war breaking out. During this, there's an assassination attempt on the president via, I'm forgetting the black super soldier's name. Isaiah Bradley ends up trying to shoot the president. Yeah. I got that reference, and I approve. Throughout the movie, a plot unravels of, if you've watched the original Incredible Hulk movie, a kind of throwaway character almost in that movie ends up being the main villain in this movie, that of the leader, and I'm forgetting his name too right now.
Samuel Stearns, you talking about?
Yeah, Stearns, Dr. Stearns. He ends up being the leader. He's infected with gamma radiation. He has basically a mega mind instead of mega muscles. And he's orchestrating this plan to destroy Everett Ross, who is now president. And he uses mind control to do so. And so Sam Wilson and Joaquin Torres go on this little escapade to go and stop the leader. And the movie culminates with Ross finding out he's been infused with gamma radiation, and now he turns into Red Hulk at the end and has a big, Hulk smash fight with Sam Wilson, which ends with, the sun's getting real low and he goes back to normal and goes to prison. And the Avengers are apparently going to get rebuilt, with Sam now heading that up. And that's kind of what this movie establishes, is the existence of Red Hulk, Falcon, or Sam as the new Captain America, and he's going to establish the Avengers. Those are the key takeaways, I would say, in terms of how this contributes to the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Right. Now...
and the development of adamantium.
Correct. Now, just for my clarification purposes, does he actually get the green light again to rebuild the Avengers by the end of the film? Because that was given to him early on and then reneged partway through the film.
Yeah, he isn't really given the green light. At least I didn't catch that. I think he kind of just goes, the world needs the Avengers, so we're going to do that.
Yeah, he doesn't it's not really like an authorization to at the end. It's more like he decides he's going to.
Yeah.
On his own. Now, that's very little on the plot of the movie itself, so that's more for future movies. But
right, and for people who are unfamiliar with the Marvel Universe, to actually, if you for some reason wanted to watch this movie, you could, in order to actually have the background necessarily to watch this film and be fully caught up, you would at the very least want to watch Captain America or Falcon and Winter Soldier and the Eternals film. And I guess, yeah, the Incredible
Actually,
Hulk film
I have
to
not
watch
seen
those.
the Eternals yet. I've not seen the Eternals.
I have
and
not either.
But I was aware enough of the plot of the Eternals, and it's almost like, you know what? I feel like I understood what was happening in this movie
Right.
to
I
a
mean,
certain degree.
basically, you need to know that
So,
a giant rock landed in the
yeah,
middle of the ocean.
a new island appeared in the Indian Ocean.
Yeah, I think Eternals is a whole nother tomato that
So
you can
the
deal with
only
when we get
movies
there.
you need to watch before watching this is the Captain America movies,
Well,
Falcon Winter Soldier. Well, even then, I guess, yeah. But I mean, I guess Falcon Winter Soldier and the Incredible Hulk, the original Incredible Hulk movie. Those are the only two things you really need to watch.
yeah.
So, to get the
Actually,
background for this.
and I'll get into this more, but I don't think you even need to watch Falcon and Winter Soldier to get this movie, which is, I think, one of the problems with
Well,
it.
the only way I'd say you would have to is because Isaiah Bradley is a big character in the series, and he comes back for this movie. It gives some background for his character before this movie.
Yeah, that's something I got. I actually didn't. Fun fact: I didn't make it through the Falcon Winter Soldier show. So,
Yeah, I did, and while I didn't like the Falcon Winter Soldier, I understood, like, watching this who the characters were in the background leading up to this because of the show.
right, and
So.
because I understood there was some background with Isaiah Bradley's character specifically, I gave his character grace when it came to the review because I didn't have that background, right? But I knew it was built up in other content that they assumed you watched. Is that generally great? No, but we have a world of sequels and interconnected universes with the MCU. You kind of have to live with it and give some bearing there because, you're not going to review The Lord of the Rings and Return of the King without also having some background for the Two Towers and the Fellowship. So, if I'm going to give those ones grace, I also need to give this one grace. Anyways, we're going to move on to the actual thoughts of this film. So let's talk about the initial opening scene. You get that classic scene where they're trying to get this package from the Serpent organization, the Secret Serpents or whatever they're called, and it
Headed up by
reestablishes right. And it reestablishes the character of Captain America now as the Falcon, who has taken on this mantle. Joaquin Torres taking on the mantle of the Falcon, etc., etc. Avalon, what were your thoughts on this opening scene for this film?
So, I didn't really give it that many points, the opening scene, because this is pretty stereotypical for a superhero opening sequence. Like, we're shown a character, super abilities and tech, and we're shown to his sidekick, we're shown a villain, the character of Sidewinder, who we're supposed to believe at first is the villain of this movie, though he's not really. He's just a side villain.
Right.
And which is a shame because I think I like the actor who played Sidewinder more than the other
Giancarlo.
villain. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're introduced to Thaddeus Ross and the whole adamantium, everything that leads to the conflict later on in this movie. So.
Can I just put a sidebar real quick?
Yeah.
This has nothing to do with the movie. It was just something I observed watching as I watched this film.
Yeah.
So many actors now are old. Harrison Ford is so old. Giancarlo, I'm sorry, he actually looked old in this film. And it's kind of like I don't know if we're running out of new people that are great actors or if they just don't trust new actors to do well. So they're just going back to people that they know are good. But Harrison Ford is a little old to be playing a superhero or a supervillain in a film, in my general opinion. Now, that doesn't actually affect the review. It's just my general thoughts.
I think also, just real quick, I think it goes back to the idea that Disney relies too much on its IP. And this is kind of the same idea, that they rely heavily on these known actors to draw in a crowd. And so that's why Harrison Ford in Red Hulk were a big part of their advertisement for this movie, even though he wasn't the main villain for the movie. And you were kind of deceived. It's same with Sidewinder. The actor, he's a good actor. He's well known. They're using that almost like IP to draw in a crowd.
Right. And that's my impression.
And I think Marvel, over the last few years, they have not been doing as financially well with their movies and shows. So I think they start to rely more heavily on actors instead of, because they thought that would work to draw people in. And I don't know if it did. So. But
Well, yeah, it's interesting because I know historically that was a way to successfully bring people in to watch a
yeah.
movie. Was that
Hmm.
you saw that Woody Harrelson or someone was in the film, and you're like, oh, I love Woody Harrelson. I'm going to
Mhm.
watch a Woody Harrelson film or something like that. And so
Yeah.
it's not. I know it has historically worked. I don't know that it continues to work. I certainly don't go to a film and watch it simply because an actor's in it. Um,
Yeah.
Although I will say Mickey 17 is very enticing, but I think that has more to do with the premise than necessarily Robert Pattinson. That being said, Robert Pattinson is great. But,
I do want to see that movie.
right. Anyways,
I think we all do.
yeah, anyways, we're not going to give him to Robert Pattinson because he's not even in this film. Let's get back to the opening scene. Avalon, I think I cut you off. What were your thoughts on what was going
No,
on
I just
there?
finished off. I finished off. I just was giving a rundown of the opening sequence. I don't think it was the worst opening ever, but it
Mhm.
definitely comes close to being a bad opening. So I didn't think there was anything about it that was particularly memorable.
Right.
So
I mean, it's just following a script that we've seen pretty much in most Marvel
Mhm.
movies at this point. We talked about this a lot in the Thor series, where you see this especially in Thor 2 and most other Marvel movies going forward from that, where they have this big action scene early on that establishes the powers of the superhero, reintroduces you to them, introduces you roughly to what's going on, maybe not, maybe it's just reestablishing the characters, and then goes into the plot of the film. Generally, it's very pandering to the superhero that is introduced, and they win, right? They always win in the first battle scene. Uh, this one added nothing unique, right? It literally showed Falcon now as Winter Soldier taking on this. I mean, sorry, not as Winter Soldier. Good night as Captain America taking on this new mantle.
I know you want to needle Andrew. Don't needle him like that.
Yeah, I know. Um, Yeah, so anyways, Captain America now has wings and adamantium, vibranium wings that are super powered with this shock stuff and all that stuff. It introduces all that.
Mhm.
I didn't really like it. I gave it some points because it is engaging. It's action, right? But it's
Mhm.
not that. There's nothing unique about it. Nothing unique about it.
Mhm.
So, Andrew, what were your thoughts on that first bit?
I think it was the stereotypical Marvel opening, but even less whelming than normal.
Mhm.
It was very much just, we need to have some sort of fight to play into this, but it's not going to actually truly build into the greater portions of this plot, other than the fact that like the leader somehow had something to do with it. Like the package itself wasn't really special to the plot of the movie, other than the fact that it was adamantium.
Right.
Mhm.
It was just like, we need to. It felt forced, is what I'm trying to say. Like, in terms of the fight itself, it's, we need a fight here. How do we incorporate this into this movie? Because if you think about it, Sam is already going to be invited to the White House because Ross wants to rebuild the Avengers. He doesn't need Sam to have gone and gotten the adamantium to want him to be at this meeting. He wants the Avengers reassembled, which means he's going to have him there regardless. And
Mhm.
so the fight itself wasn't necessary in this movie to progress the plot.
Right. Exactly. And as a contrast, right, if you look at our review of Thor Ragnarok, right, at the very least in that one, it has a similar type of opener, but the difference is it actually added value to later in the film because they introduced a key pivotal figure that was not in the film a lot, that ended up using for the ending of the film. I
Well, yeah.
still don't think that film was great, but it actually had a significant component to how the film started versus this really did not, because you could have talked about adamantium and all of that going on without that opening scene, and the conflict between Thaddeus Ross and the Japanese and everyone else still could have occurred.
Yeah.
So,
And I think what really peeved me about the opener is the introduction of Sidewinder and the actor they used. You didn't need him. You could
Mhm.
have picked any Joe Schmo off the street that nobody knew about, like they did with Captain America Winter Soldier, Batroc the Leaper. No one knows who that character is, and if you do, you're a Marvel nerd. No one knows who Sidewinder is. If you do, you're a Marvel nerd.
Right.
You don't need a big name actor to play this little known Marvel villain. And he was a throwaway villain too, just like Batroc the Leaper was and Captain America Winter Soldier. He shows up once or twice and he's there just as a plot device. And it's just like, why did you have this phenomenal actor play a throwaway F-tier Marvel villain? Why?
Well, the other thing too is like it's like Giancarlo doesn't really like. I don't even remember him being introduced in the commercials for this film.
No, he wasn't.
No,
And
he
what else
was.
I
is
didn't.
he was?
He was.
Or was
Giancarlo, like Sidewinder was premiered heavily in the commercials for this movie,
Oh,
along with
interesting.
Red Hulk.
Well,
Like
I know
in all
Red
the commercials
Hulk
I
was.
saw. Yeah, Red Hulk
Interesting.
was, and so was Sidewinder. The character we did not see was the main villain, the leader, because it was supposed to be a plot twist character.
No,
Interesting.
right. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But okay, I believe you. I just don't recall it. But I also was not like I didn't originally want to review this movie, as I said at the beginning. So I was not really paying attention to the commercials. I just saw Red Hulk, and I was like, all right, here we go.
When you think about Carlo as an actor, right? What types of characters is he normally playing? He's playing the maniacal, like Thrawn type character, where he is behind the scenes. He is this mastermind who is just orchestrating things. He is much more the leader type character than the hitman, and so I think that it was not just an unnecessary use of him. It was an inappropriate use of him as an actor to have him used as just a random hitman. So,
You disgraced Giancarlo by putting him in this film, is what you're saying.
yeah, literally.
True. I agree. Let's move on because I don't want to get caught up in the opener. It's just the opener. As much as we could trash it or not
True.
trash it, honestly, it was fine. We're just getting on tangents. I really want to talk about the main character. Let's talk about Sam Wilson. Is he a flawed character? Does he have compelling reasons to be in this film? I want to hear the pro arguments. Andrew, shut up. Avalon, give me
actually,
the case.
here's the deal. He's not a flawed character, but know what? Neither is Steve Rogers. And if you look at the original Captain America movie, he stands for an ideal. And I think that is what they were going for with Sam Wilson in this movie. I don't think they did that well, but I see what they were trying to do. Now, so I didn't give him full marks. He's not a great character in my book, but he's not a terrible character either. It was more like they were trying to put things together with this character, some of it which didn't work, but they were trying to create an ideal character, a character who represented something. That was what they were trying to do with Sam Wilson.
Andrew, what are your thoughts? I think that's interesting, but I want to hear what you're thinking about that.
So I actually agree with Avalon on the idea that Captain America is the perfect character. And I think that's what makes Captain America such a compelling character in the original Marvel movies. And I think that's one of the reasons that his trilogy is the best trilogy, in my opinion, out of the other movies. Like Iron Man 1, great movie. Iron Man 2 and 3, a little iffy there. I think that Captain America 1, 2, and 3 are all great movies. Now, arguably, the third one's a little less great. But that said, what makes Captain America more compelling is he's the very Superman-esque type character, where he is the perfect character and that he always does what's right. The problem is he is given impossible decisions, and Sam is never given those in this movie. Captain America is placed in these situations where he has to make decisions that betray the very thing that he stands for. Captain America, Winter Soldier, he is forced to turn against the entire institution that he thought he could trust. That is S.H.I.E.L.D. And the second one, he is forced to turn on the U.S. government. And the thing that makes it so hard for him is, or it's not technically the U.S. government, it's like the UN. The idea is that he stands for these ideas of freedom, and he was originally an agent of the US military. And so he's very much someone who was created by the government, but as the movies progress, he learns that the thing that created him is not necessarily the thing he ought to stand for. And that's the journey he goes on. Whereas Sam doesn't get presented with these impossible decisions. He never grows as a character in this movie. He is the exact same person he is at the beginning that he is at the end. He is not sort of put into worse situations other than Joaquin getting like blown out of the sky. But the thing is that's not played out in such a way that it is made to seem impactful in the movie, other than like the one scene where he's standing over his bed, which kind of, I think, gets thrown off by Bucky showing up, but we'll get to that later. So I think Sam Wilson, as a whole, like on a general note, I think just as a character is not done well. Now, I can go into why I think he's a bad Captain America, but we can get to that after Maverick goes, because I don't want to take up all the time here.
No, and like for people's reference, right, in regards to the 9-point system we use to review this film, which if you want to do it, you can check it out at www.alostplot.com/9 points.
Check in the description below.
Point. Yeah, like and subscribe, all that crap. Anyways, I'm not going to emphasize that. But I do want to emphasize, also, I did that because somebody said I should do that. And I'm like, why? It feels so weird. Anyways, in regards to what you guys are talking about, this is one of the few times where I feel like when I walked into this film, I'm like, this is a totally different character. I do not need to review Captain America, the original, the first Avenger, before reviewing this film. After that comment, I kind of feel like I do, because that's
why I said we should do those ones first.
Shut up. I didn't have the time.
We'll get around to it.
We will. You'll probably see those soon, guys, if you're interested, and keep listening. In regards to this film, though, just my initial thoughts is kind of similar to what Andrew is saying. First off, does a character need to be flawed for it to be a good movie, right? Out of the 9 points, you're talking about a half a point maybe being added based off of them being a flawed character. So no, you can actually have a very compelling movie without them being a flawed character. That is established in the system that we've built here on the podcast. That being said, there is some truth to what Andrew was saying about having to struggle and grow through opportunities. I think it's very hard to make the case that you can grow and learn as an individual without having flaws, though. My general impression, and I might have to revise this when I get to reviewing Captain America, the original one. My initial thought is that there is actual flaws and struggles around the idea of authority and chafing under authority, and what does it mean to both be an American and be for his country while not disrespecting the people who are above him, and also being responsible for the people around him, right? And you see that in his struggles around Bucky and other people as well. So that's my initial thoughts, right? That being said, that's not a full comprehensive thoughts on the first Avenger, actual Steve Rogers, right, which we're talking about here. In regards to Sam Wilson, I think you guys are 100% correct. He is a white knight in shining armor type character. He doesn't have flaws. And that actually isn't the most compelling reason why he sucks as a main character, but it is a significant factor that adds to other factors. Go ahead, Evelyn. I know you had some thoughts.
No, I was just going to say that because we're talking about ideals here, like the conflict is when those ideals clash with other ideals or different concepts. Correct. And that's where the hard choices come in. It's like, how does this concept or how does this like mode of living or this like thought process, when it comes into contact with something else, does it change? Does it stay the same? Like, how does it handle this opposing force,
right,
more or less? So, I mean, in that regard, like the hard decisions is how do those ideals interact? When a character represents an ideal, we're showing that ideal physically represented interacting with another concept or a worldview or a belief. So
correct, and that goes back to what Andrew was saying about struggling through that ideal and figuring out what it fully means and all of that stuff. Yeah, 100%.
So I actually don't agree with anything Andrew pretty much said, because I mean what he said about Sam Wilson, because it's like the reality is, yes, he doesn't make any hard decisions throughout this movie. I mean, he just, like, aside from Joaquin, like, getting injured during the fight over the Indian Ocean, he doesn't have any major losses. I guess you could say Isaiah Bradley getting thrown into prison, but that's more of a motivation for his character than anything. Where it's like, because Isaiah's thrown into prison and might die, that's the motive for Sam Wilson to go on this journey, because he's trying to clear his friend's name. But that in and of itself is not like a struggle or a loss. Not really.
But I think that was my point.
Yeah, no, that was your point. I was agreeing with you.
Oh, okay.
No, I thought you said you were disagreeing. So my bad.
No. I'm actually, even though like we had different things to say, we actually agree with what Andrew said for the most part. So
yeah, and that's important. What are your thoughts on his motive for being involved in this film?
I think his motive is mostly solid, because I think if you have a friend that you truly care about and they're thrown into a situation like this and you truly believe they're innocent, wouldn't you if you truly care about them, you would do whatever you could in your power to try to clear their name or to try to find the facts, at the very least, which is what Sam Wilson does in this movie. So I don't think his motive in this movie is bad. I think his motive is actually a fairly reasonable motive, all things considered. Because Isaiah Bradley is just the motive for why Sam Wilson goes on this journey through this movie. And I think that part of the movie isn't a bad... I think that part of the movie is solid. It's a small part, but the motive is, I think, okay.
Okay. I see what you're saying. Andrew, what are your thoughts?
I think it's okay. I don't necessarily find Isaiah Bradley and Sam Wilson's relationship super compelling. And that's primarily because Bradley is introduced in the Falcon Winter Soldier TV show. And for those of you who don't know, he's introduced to Sam through Bucky. Bucky knows of his existence. Sam finds out about him. We don't really see any sort of relationship develop there. And it's kind of just rushed throughout the movie. And it's just like implied they have been hanging out a bunch. But the real thing that makes him compelling, and this goes into like the Falcon Winter Soldier TV show, is like this idea that he was experimented upon, and it feels like there's a lot of info dumping in the movie. And it's like the reason I say it's okay is because like it's very much like the Captain America Winter Soldier type thing, where like during Civil War, where he leaves and disobeys authorities because his friend is at risk. And so it's like it's okay. I don't think it's the best or like the greatest sort of motivator. This isn't where it got huge points taken away from me. I think where it got points taken away from me in regards to his motivation is the fact that he does defy the U.S. federal government and he outright defies the president, and there's no repercussions for it. Whereas in the other Captain America movies, when he does defy the U.S. government, there are massive repercussions for it. And so there's no consequences for his actions here.
Right. And that's... Yeah, I see what you're saying. And that's for later on in the film.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what you say is interesting, Avalon. I think to be honest, Isaiah Bradley didn't even factor in my initial review of this film in regards to his motive specifically.
So low.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that is significant, right? Because I think the reason that the character is involved in the plot is a very significant reason for them to continue into the plot. I do agree with Andrew's analysis of Isaiah Bradley on that point, but on a broader context as well. If you look at the dialogue in this film, and I know I'm such a dialogue stickler, and I try not to let it affect the review. In this case, I think it's significant to note, and here's why, right? When you watch this film, you will have people say things, and then someone else responds immediately after, right? Immediately. And there is no opportunity to, one, sit in the tension. When someone says something that is inflammatory in any way, right, or something provocative, the person responds immediately. When someone says something like that, you do not respond immediately. Generally, there's a moment of shock, like, oh my goodness, they just said that. How could they say that? But in this film, you don't have that moment of shock at all. You have an immediately response. Like they were ready for them to say something incredibly provocative. Secondarily, it's just not how people naturally communicate, is to say, boom, 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 we're going to just go back and forth. Generally, there is a cadence, there is a rhythm, and those cadences and rhythms between people are different. And this is important because when you have multiple violations of how dialogue and how people talk, even how we talk on this podcast, are different, when those are violated continually, it makes it hard for us to get engaged and invested in these characters as a whole. You can't look at this character and say they are a genuine character when they talk like every single other person who is basically a puppet in this film. Everyone becomes the same puppet who says things, the words they were given, immediately after. And I don't understand why movies do this. I've seen this more and more in movies recently, and I get the impression that maybe it saves them time so the movie doesn't extend as long. But then you're making the question is, do you really need this dialogue if it's going to become manufactured for the sake of getting through more content rather than letting people sit in the drama, sit in the emotion, and develop the thoughts and the feelings that are supposed to be insinuated by the scene that you're trying to build? So I really just found it hard to buy a lot of Sam Wilson's character specifically and see that most of his motive in this film was anything beyond duty. Like it was the right thing to do because he was the knight in shining armor, going back to what we said earlier. And so, because of that, I really found it hard to give it points. Isaiah Bradley's interesting. I'll think about that throughout the review here today, and I might give it more points because of that, specifically what you brought up, Babylon. But as a whole, I still find it hard to buy as a compelling motive for Sam Wilson.
Okay.
Anyways, that's my thoughts. I don't know if you guys have any pushback on that. Feel free. Otherwise, I feel like we're free to move on.
I do want to talk about Sam Wilson as Captain America because obviously this movie is the first in what will presumably be a trio of movies here. And of course, there are plenty of people who think that Sam maybe should or should not have gotten the shield at the end of Avengers Endgame. Regardless of that debate, I think that this movie is very telling for why, in my opinion, Sam Wilson does not make a good Captain America. And I had to think long and hard about this because I think for me, the biggest sticking point of this movie is it just didn't feel like a Captain America movie. And I asked myself, okay, should this feel different than other Captain America movies? And in a way, I think the answer is yes, but I think also the answer is no. And you ask yourself, why? And the thing is at the end of the movie, Endgame, he hands Sam the shield. And you have to think about this in the sense of that Captain America is not Steve Rogers. Captain America is this idea. He is a symbol. Right. And so while Sam should, yes, bring his own nuance to the character, he is still meant to embody the things that Steve Rogers embodied as Captain America. He is the leader of this symbol that inspires hope in others. But what else he is he's Captain America. There are ideals that Captain America uniquely stands for that makes his character very unique. And so when you think about that, what are those? Individualism, freedom, small government. These are all things that Captain America is very adamantly pro in the first three movies, being that, he stands for like American idealism. And so that's what makes Captain America unique from, say, other characters who are just morally good characters, right? He is the morally good guy. He is the Superman type guy. But what makes him unique from those characters is that he also brings with him American idealism. Sam almost kind of spits in the face of American idealism in certain moments of the movie where he there's like snide remarks against like what does America stand for, and the actor himself even talks about this in interviews where he's like, Captain America shouldn't have the name America in his name, and it's like, no, he really should, because you can play just Captain Good Guy and be a different superhero. Captain America is Captain America for a reason, and taking the American nature out of who Captain America is really stripping away the unique elements of his character. And so I think that this movie itself doesn't feel like a Captain America movie because it's just Falcon wielding Captain America's shield. It's not Sam Wilson being Captain America. It's Sam Wilson being Falcon and using the shield that Steve Rogers gave him.
So, yeah, sure. So let's just, to maybe counter that and build it into a broader context, let's talk about the themes of this film. Because if you're talking about what Captain America stands for, that should be represented in the themes he embodies, right? What are your general thoughts on what this film is about if it's not about those things, Andrew? And then, Avalon, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I mean, I would argue that this movie doesn't really have themes.
Wow, something I gave it more points than you, Andrew. Okay, wow. Go ahead, Avalon.
So, I know what the original themes of the original Captain America movies are. I'm not going to get into them just because we haven't reviewed those movies yet, and also because this movie doesn't embody those themes. However, I do think this movie has a theme, though oddly enough, it's not so much to do with Captain America Sam Wilson as it is with some other characters in the movie, and that's with the idea of trying to do better and trying to like be better people, like trying to change more or less, and the idea of change as a character. So that is the themes of this movie, I think. Sam Wilson doesn't really change, though the only hint we're given as far as like that idea and theme is the scene where he has the heart to heart with Joaquin, and where he's like, I feel the pressure to do like perfect, to be like to fill the shoes I've been given, and to be this like better character. Like that's the only scene we're given a hint of this idea of the that relates to this idea of change or trying to be better. But other than that, Sam Wilson doesn't really struggle visibly or like not really with trying to do better because it's like he always generally succeeds or gets out of the situations he's in. I mean, you could arguably say he got captured in the one scene in the base, but he pretty much immediately gets out of it. And it's just like, I mean, in relation to the themes of the story, like Sam Wilson doesn't really embody those themes, is what I'd say.
Yeah,
So,
I mean,
if we want to talk about themes in relation to other characters, we can get into that. But that's as far as Sam Wilson goes. That is what I think.
So, kind of along the same lines, I don't think he stands for the ideals that the traditional Captain America stands for, which I could see why you say he's not a traditional Captain America character. And that, yeah, I mean, the one scene you explained says it all. I would say maybe my thoughts on the themes are slightly different about either reconciling your past or caring for your family and things like that. But all of that is really around Thaddeus Ross and the idea that Sam Wilson helps him to achieve that. Which is, yeah, we can talk about that when we get to that. But like that's generally the themes of this film, and they do try very hard to develop those themes from the start. So they're there. They're not great. They exist. And they have nothing to do with the original Captain America. So, there we go.
I mean, I will say, and this is a point I was going to make later, but I think Thaddeus Ross is a much more compelling character than Sam Wilson in this movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because he actually has an arc. And so if we're thinking of Thaddeus Ross as the character who's more compelling, then there are some themes around him. When I think of themes that are being promoted in a movie, though, I typically think of them surrounding the main protagonist. And so because there aren't really any surrounding Sam Wilson, I don't typically think of this movie as having those themes. I think there are like minor themes within side characters. Now, I think that was kind of what I was getting at when I said I don't really think this movie has themes.
I see what you're saying.
So, and I think the one thing that's unfortunate too about this movie is it kind of does a repeat of the Falcon Winter Soldier TV show, which is that Sam's whole struggle in that show is how could I possibly be Captain America? And then he resolves it by the end in whatever shenaniganery that they do. But then in this movie, he's having the same struggle. And it's like they just want to loop it. And it's like his character is going to be stuck in this loop for the foreseeable future where each movie is just, how can I be Captain America? Oh, no, I'm black. They don't like me, guys. No, I can't be Captain America. They're racist. And it's just, it just makes his character obnoxious. It's like, bro, get over yourself.
Yeah, I mean, he's not... Well, I mean, he doesn't go all the way down that hole that you just insinuated, but maybe he gets that. We'll see.
He does in the TV show. He like has this whole monologue where he's like, "I see you judging me on TV."
Oh, okay. See, I didn't
this
even
movie
get that far.
They didn't get that far in this movie, but it's still implied, and I was at least appreciative of that. They didn't go on the whole rant that he went in the TV show, but you know that doesn't say very much.
Sure. No, that's fair. I think we should move on.
Yeah, I'm fine with moving on.
I think we've hashed Sam Wilson up enough.
Okay, so we're going to talk about let's talk about the. I do want to talk about Thaddeus Ross. He's going to be a pivotal point of the discussion here. I fully believe that.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, for starters, let's talk about Samuel Stearns. What are your thoughts of the villain of this film? And just to switch it up, let's talk from Andrew's perspective first.
I think Samuel Stearns as a character, like it was cool to see them finally use this character from all the way in 2008 when they had him in the original Incredible Hulk movie. And then they bring back Betty Ross, the original actress from that movie. I was kind of disappointed we didn't get to see Ed Norton because he's the better version of Hulk. Sorry, Mark Ruffalo. But other than that, he just felt so stereotypical. Like, he has all this intellect, and he's just a toddler with super intellect. He's like, I'm pissed. You hurt me, Daddy Ross. Now I'm gonna hurt you back.
Sure. His motivation,
by turning you
Well-
into Hulk.
I mean, not-
It's just
Like,
I'm so mad. I'm gonna give you superpowers. All right, Alan, what are your thoughts?
I was just gonna say that as far as Samuel Stearns go, I think his motivation isn't necessarily lacking. I mean, if you think about his perspective, where he's like locked up for years and is a lab rat, and like he's forced to work on stuff for who knows how long, a decade, several decades. I mean, in a certain sense, his motivation is somewhat valid, but you're right in that his as the movie progresses, he makes less and less sense.
Mm-hmm.
His motivation, like what he's trying to accomplish. I mean, there are things about his character which I appreciated, which was like, okay, this is interesting from other villains. Because, like, even though he's the main villain of this movie, he never really fights ever in this movie.
Right.
He's always, like, in the background, like, getting other people to do his bidding. He's working on gadgets and other stuff. He's got things going for him. So on a certain villain level, as far as superheroes go, was more interesting in some regards. It's like, oh, this is more, like, I appreciated that part of his character. But you're right. Like, as the movie progresses, his reasoning makes less sense.
Right. Well, and like,
and it does fall apart towards the end.
Right. Go ahead, Andrew.
I will say, the thing that made his character so disappointing to me is that he's supposed to be like this extremely intelligent character, right? He gets outsmarted by Sam Wilson. And it's like, okay, I'm going to take you back for a second. The Flash TV show, right? It's not amazing. Season 4 has the Thinker as a villain. And I think they do the Thinker, his villain type he is a genius. They do him well in that no matter how fast the Flash is, no matter how powerful he gets, he cannot outrun him because he knows his every move. And that's what the leader should have been. No matter what Sam Wilson does, no matter how hard he tries to do the right thing, the leader is always 20, 30 steps ahead of him. But in this movie, Sam Wilson is the one running circles around this super genius. And it's like, okay, so you're just retarded, bro. Like, why? You're not super smart. You just turned green and ugly and got a big brain. Like, no, you're not that smart. And so I think that was one of the things that was really disappointing is like, you had a villain that could have been compelling for Sam Wilson because Sam Wilson doesn't have superpowers. He isn't super intelligent. And so you could have given him a huge run for his money. And he could have been struggling to be this good guy, this person who is embodying Captain America and carrying on these ideals while also having to struggle against the full force of the United States federal government and having to defy them to save his friend. But during the entirety of this movie, he's being outsmarted by this guy.
Yeah.
And then the thing that the thing that really put me over the edge here was when he went into Samuel Stern's lab, right? Samuel Stern locks him in there and says, I'm eliminating this variable. But then Sam just puts his hand through the bars and hits the button to open it. And I went, what is this? How are you locking him up and keeping him away when he can push the freaking button? That is the most idiot move that a super genius could make. Nobody would make that mistake, okay? Maybe Ant-Man. What is this?
Yeah, well, there is multiple times in this movie where I went, if you're a super genius, why did this happen? Like, the whole thing, the first one, which is the most explainable way, was when he went to the guy's house. He's like, can I use your phone? And then shoots them, and then uses their phone just to call Thaddeus Ross. It's like, newsflash, you have Thaddeus Ross on speed dial. You don't need someone else's phone to do that. Now, hypothetically, it's like, I need to kill these characters because they have some interest in the plot. We don't know that as characters, so I don't think I should give them the benefit of a doubt because we don't know who these random people are. They see them like one other time in the film. But hypothetically, right, if you want to play the devil's advocate. Beyond that, like you said, that whole scene that you just talked about is also a significant part. But in beyond that, there's also other times where it's like, you know what my big plan is? I'm going to turn myself in so that I can reveal to the press what Thaddeus Ross is, this whole thing about Thaddeus Ross and manipulating him and how he's going to become the Hulk. Why couldn't you leak that to the press without turning yourself in and actually neutralizing your ability to be effective?
Well,
If
also
you're a
another.
genius, why wouldn't you just
Yeah.
figure out a way? There has to be a way. It's not like this is that much more difficult to leak things to the press. Random tip-offs happen all the time. In addition, there's like his whole idea to destroy Thaddeus Ross was that he was going to have him in a public place turn into the Red Hulk. And in the Indian Ocean, he doesn't turn into the Red Hulk, and Samuel Starnes goes, "Crap! Crap! My giant plan was ruined. I have to find a new way to do this." And it's like, there's no other way for you to get Thaddeus Ross super pissed off. We have multiple examples in this film of recordings of him just getting randomly pissed off. You don't think you can just get him randomly pissed off at any given time through multiple scenarios? I would not be concerned at all if I was Samuel Stearns to find 50 different scenarios to make this guy turn into the Red Hulk because it's clearly he has an anger issue.
Yeah, and I
Anyways, there
think
was
would have
like,
yeah, I think what would have made this character more interesting is if every time we as the audience perceive his plan to fail, he doesn't get emotional. His type of character should not be emitting the types of emotions that he's emitting in this movie. That of frustration, anger, rage. That is not those are the emotions that Red Hulk should be emitting, not the leader. And so what he should have been, calm, collected, Thrawn type character where he's like, I've got it all under control. And you realize that every time he failed, it was all a part of his long-term plan. The
right,
second
exactly.
thing, yeah, the second thing about this character is the whole thing with Sam getting the pills and then him having to go out of his way and kill that the military
Oh my
personnel.
gosh.
Why?
Yes.
How are you a super genius and you let him get a hold of the pills? That's another instance of like, this is a whole waste of time for us as the audience because you're not building up this villain properly. You're wasting our time with this by actively ruining his character, and you're killing off these characters unnecessarily. We don't need to see this at all, okay? What are we doing
Also,
here?
how does a doctor flank a military group to kill a specific individual in that group to make sure they don't reveal significant information?
Also, couldn't he transmit sounds and lights to their own devices? Why did he have to go there? Couldn't he have done it from his
Yes.
walkie-talkie?
Ah! Yeah,
Brisboe ain't the leader. He's the frickin' clown.
Yeah,
He got
exactly.
his goofy green brain walking around being an idiot.
I don't know. I don't know. Avalon, do you have any pushback? I feel like I need some pushback on this to justify this character. Because I'm like losing my mind on this.
I mean, to be honest, like I didn't give the leader much points in this movie because I agree with a lot of these statements, and I'll be honest, like I was intrigued at first when his character was hinted at, and like I liked how they built him up to begin with, but like after they introduce him and as the movie starts to show his character in action, that's when the movie started to fall apart regarding his character. It was just like it stopped making sense.
Yeah.
It stopped like logically following, and it just was like, and you're right, like as the leader, he shouldn't have been the emotional mess he was. And he just made so many questionable decisions throughout the movie that are just like, why? What was the point of this?
Yeah.
And like, I mean, I didn't give it like as I said, my initial review of this was 5.2, and it wasn't because of the leader at all. Like the leader, like there was nothing from the leader almost. Like maybe the build up, but after that, nah, nothing.
You know, I think what happened was the parts of his brain that expanded were the parts of the brain that are in charge of emotion. So he's not actually that smart. He just became super feminine.
We're gonna move on now. All right. Okay, yeah. Let's talk about. Actually, no, we're not even gonna talk about Thaddeus Ross. Screw you for that. We're going to talk about Joaquin Torres. What are you guys' thoughts on the sidekick in this movie? Amal, you want to hit it off?
Oh, yeah.
So, when I was looking at the side characters of this movie, almost all of them fell into one camp for me. Where I just was like, they really don't have a whole lot of development. They're just there to advance certain parts of the story. There's like a semblance of development to Joaquin Torres. There's a semblance of development to Ruth's character, the security to
the ex-widow.
Yeah, the ex-widow. some to Isaiah as well, and then Commander Dunphy and others. Like, they're all, like, got semblances of character development, but it's not really enough. It's just barely there. I mean, they're just, like, cardboard cutouts who aren't really motivated to do anything except to, like, follow orders and to help the main character, more or less. So, they're not really... So, like, I have a hard time calling the side characters, fully fledged characters, if that makes sense. So
Sure. Andrew, you have anything you want to add to that? And maybe on the more holistic idea than necessarily specifics.
I think that the problem this movie runs into, right, again, is that it's just they're like striving for greatness and falling flat on their face, right? They're bringing in Harrison Ford. They're bringing in Betty Ross. They're bringing in I'm forgetting Sidewinder's name, the actor.
Giancarlo.
Yeah, they're bringing in all these actors and these people from older movies, and they're tying in all this stuff, and they're giving us Red Hulk, right? And it's just like they're trying to make this a phenomenal movie, but in the time frame that they're doing that, they're also neglecting all of their characters in the essential portions of this movie. And it's like this movie, and it's I've been waiting to say this, is like Thor Ragnarok in that they promoted it as a fight between Captain America and Red Hulk. And they were like, this is what this movie is built around. We do not care what the rest of this movie is about. It's going to have this fight, and that's why you're going to watch it. And that's why the commercials and all the promotional material was just Red Hulk and Captain America. And Thor Ragnarok was just Thor versus Hulk. You come and see this fight, boys and girls, because it's going to be epic. And the rest of the story don't really matter. And so it's just like the side characters were just plot devices to get to that fight. And that includes the villain. And I think that's why the leader is so lacking. Because he was just a plot device to get to that fight. They just needed a reason to have Harrison Ford Hulk out and have a fight with Sam Wilson. And even that fight's lackluster, and I'm sure we'll get to that when we get to Ross. But the thing is like, it left me as the audience sitting there going for the whole movie, why am I here? Why am I here? And then we get to the fight and I go, okay, that's why you brought me here, and it wasn't even worth it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I thought the attempt, just to kind of push back though, was with Joaquin Torres' character specifically. You actually see this idea of emotional stakes that they're trying to build when he actually falls into the ocean and has this whole thing in the hospital. Like, he actually was a character that had some stakes and meaning to him compared to this idea that they're all just sock puppets.
I do think that his character had potential, right? And there's a lot of this in this movie, right? The leader, he has potential. Captain America, he has potential, right? But they don't execute it well at all. And so Joaquin's character has potential. This emotional risk has potential, but the movie just ends up being so focused on this fight with Red Hulk that Joaquin Torres just gets lost in the background in the weight of what happens to him with him almost dying. I mean, I, as the audience, had no inclination that he was going to die. I did not have any reason to fear for his life. It was like, oh, he's just going to be in the hospital. He'll be fine. And even Sam Wilson's character didn't seem to be super worried about it. There was that, like, 2-minute scene, right, where he's standing outside the window and Bucky comes on by, and then as soon as that conversation's over, it's all hunky-dory. And we never have any sort of concern for Joaquin again. They have the conversation at his bedside, but it's just like, oh, we're going to go and we're going to be Captain America and Falcon again.
To be perfectly frank, the movie would have had a little bit more weight and meaning if Joaquin Torres had died.
Yeah, I agree.
Would have had. Yeah. So, but Marvel's not going to do that. They're not going to kill off their characters like that.
Yeah, we can't. We need him for the next movie. Why? Because we do.
He's from Miami.
Speaking of diversity, what about the Israeli boss Seraph? How did you think of her as the new Black Widow?
Well, okay, technically she's not, and also I technically already said something about her, all my thoughts on her already, but she's just there to obey orders. She's just there to advance a certain part of the plot forward, and she's supposed to give, and I think she was supposed to be a diversion for the audience. Like, oh, she's, like, supposed to be the bad guy or something, when she's actually not, And it just was, but of course, it's one of those things in the movie that doesn't really get fully developed or used, and it's just, it didn't work.
Well, don't you know, the other movies have a badass female lead, so this one needed one too. The only difference was this one wasn't nearly as hot.
Bro got the number. That's all you could take away from the film.
Okay, first of all, she's not even that cool. Like Peggy Carter, definitely a better character than her. Black Widow in Captain America, Winter Soldier, and Civil War, better character than her. We're not even going to get to the discussion of whether or not those are compelling characters, but they at least have more reason to be involved in the plot of the movie than this girl does. All her reason to be involved is, I am security for the president. I am here.
Well, I mean, she is tasked with looking into this, but that is the only motive.
She's just Maria Hill.
She's just obeying orders, is what my point is.
She's just Thaddeus Ross as Maria Hill.
She doesn't have any stakes in the movie, not really.
Exactly.
Right. And you will see that with multiple side characters. It's not as prevalent for side characters or important for side characters. It's helpful if they do. So, I personally didn't hate her as a character, but I also didn't give them a ton of points for her. It's just I kind of like a new Black Widow character. She was okay, in my opinion.
I didn't really hate Joaquin Torres either. He just I didn't give the movie points for side characters because they were just pieces to move the plot along.
Right, and it's such a small part of the overall review. Why? Because there's some films that are absolutely spectacular that have next to no side characters. Q Ex Machina. Anyways, we're moving on. All right, we're going to talk about the guy everyone has been waiting for, Thaddeus Ross. I'm going to hand the floor to Avalon first because Andrew should only get 2 minutes to talk about this.
Okay. So I'll be honest, this is perhaps the saving grace of this movie is Thaddeus Ross for me, only because we've seen this character before in other movies, and so we already kind of have a semblance of his character. And in a way, I feel like this movie is more about Thaddeus Ross than it is about Sam Wilson, because we're seeing a man who's trying to change, who's looking who sees the mistakes of his past, and he's trying to do things better so he can make things right between him and his daughter. And it almost explicitly stated at one point, where it's I became president to try to turn over a new leaf, to try to do something different, to be a better man, to try to show that I can be different and better to the world. And so it's almost like this public act of trying to show to the world that I'm a better person, only in the terms of the story, he falls at the end and he becomes this angry brute in front of the world, and he has to give up the presidency, and he goes to the raft because he's seen as a danger now. So I think his character arc is really compelling, and it also has this very human element to it, which considering everything that's happened to the Marvel, this has been lacking in everything Marvel related. In fact, a lot of other things as well. This human element of a character trying to change, and then in the end, we see this scene between his daughter and him in the prison where they just talk, and there's something compelling about that scene on its face value just because of who the characters are in relation to each other and what Thaddeus Ross has been trying to accomplish this whole movie. And even though he hasn't proven that he can change, this moment has meaning because of who they are and what this means on its face.
I mean, I thought it was just super compelling to see Arwen on the screen again for forever. So, I was happy about that. No, Andrew, what are your thoughts? Do you have anything to counter what Avalon said? Do you agree?
I think this is a Hulk movie and Captain America is just a part of it. I think he makes a much more compelling main character. He's the character in the movie that has actual flaws. He's the character that actually goes through a transformative experience in this movie.
Literally.
There are actual stakes in this movie for his character. All of the crucial parts of a main protagonist for a character are all in Thaddeus Ross, and none of them are in Sam Wilson. And even though Sam Wilson gets more screen time, Thaddeus Ross is the person that we actually see go through all of that journey. And it's I think that if you were to look at this in light of Thaddeus Ross being the main character, you actually end up giving this movie points. And so I think he has great motivation for being involved in this movie's plot. He is literally trying to keep the entire planet from the brink of collapse, while also making sure the United States succeed. He's trying to turn over a new leaf. He's a man who's desperate. And the thing is I am a little disappointed they went with Harrison Ford, even though I love the actor. I kind of wish they kept the original actor because he's been...
The original actor is dead.
Oh, okay. I
That's
had
why
no
they
idea.
changed him.
Well,
Like, it's gonna be hard for him to continue his role when he's in the
I will
grave.
just say this: with how much CGI they can do, they could have kept him in the movie. And to be honest, Harrison Ford, plenty of CGI with that Red Hulk. So that said,
I don't even think he was the one who was doing the actions for that mocap suit, bro. I'm gonna be honest.
No, he probably wasn't. From what I can tell, I think they just CGI'd his face onto there. That to say, I understand why they did, more so now. Being dead does come with that, but I will just say this. Disney has proven that they can keep a character alive after the actor dies. Case in point, Princess Leia. Okay? I'm just going to say that, and I'm going to leave it there. I think they just wanted Harrison Ford. That said, though,
Right.
I think that he's got stakes. He's got motivations. He gets thrown into worse and worse situations. He turns into Hulk. I think the one major problem I have with his character is that Sam Wilson is the one that talks him down at the end of the movie. I think that needed to be his daughter. And I think that they lost a massive opportunity there by having it not be her and bringing her at the end of the movie. Because I don't think that Captain America as a character has the emotional... Because think about this, right? What brings Hulk down from his emotional rants or like rampages in the other movies? Someone he has an emotional connection to, right? They established in the Hulk movie. They have this with Bruce Banner and Black Widow.
Hey boy, the sun's getting real low.
Exactly. What emotional tie does Sam Wilson have with Everett Ross, right? Like, other than him being Captain America, and then he takes him to these, what is it, the peach blossoms or the cherry blossoms?
That's the point, though.
That's the scene. That's where he and his daughter went on walks. The cherry
Sure,
blossoms,
but I still don't think that being in that location is enough to get him to turn, right? And you have this in Thor Ragnarok when Thor tries to use the happy little phrase that Natasha uses with Banner. The sun's getting real low, buddy. It doesn't work. It has to be the actual
not exactly
person
what he
there.
says in that scene, though. But,
well, no. He in Thor Ragnarok, he goes to Hulk and he says,
the
sun's getting real low.
Ragnarok, I'm saying in this movie.
Oh,
That's
no. But my point is that there is a trigger, right? There is a phrase that Natasha uses, but it isn't the phrase that gets him to go down. It is the person using the phrase. And so that's why I think that the individual that's talking him down needs to be someone that has an emotional connection to him, not necessarily him just be in a setting that could have an emotional connection to him.
I'll only push back on this only because I don't think the Marvel movies have established at this point that this is the only means of bringing the Hulk down, and necessarily all Hulks in that regard, because we haven't had more than one Hulk really this whole time. The argument could be made that this is being Red Hulk and Thaddeus Ross. It could require other methods of talking him down. And also, I don't think it matters so much the person doing it, so much as what is said and the message he communicates to bring him down. And the idea he's trying to communicate to Ross in that moment is, don't be the monster that everyone sees you as, like, try to be better. He's trying to reemphasize what Ross has been trying to accomplish this whole time in that phrase. I forget exactly word for word what he says, but the idea is he's trying to get Ross to, like, think about what he's doing and to, like, remember what he's trying to do. Like, what he was trying to do earlier in the movie. So in that regard, I actually have no problem with how he talked him down and with Sam Wilson being the person talking him down because of what Sam Wilson said to talk him down in that scene.
See, I agree with a lot of what you guys are saying on both ends. My big problem with this is not necessarily whether or not he turns into the Red Hulk or turns out of the Red Hulk based on him saying a specific thing. My bigger problem is that I just couldn't buy Harrison Ford's character of the Red Hulk from the start, because this guy was pouting to every person who had an ear about he was doing this all for his daughter and he was estranged from his daughter and he really liked to be connected to his daughter. I'm sorry, if this is the most important thing in your life, are you really going to every single person who you don't know and telling them about it? Like, that's toxic. How did you become president of the United States with that kind of mentality? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So it just felt super inorganic. Someone who's going to tell you your deepest, most desperate desire of your life is not going to become president of the United States if they're telling that to everyone. I felt like that was just inorganic and inauthentic as a general rule.
Does he say that to a lot of people
Yes,
in the movie?
he
Because I know the
definitely
news
does.
media, because the news media says it a few times outright, but I don't know if he explicitly says it a bunch of times.
If you look like every other scene where he's alone, he brings it up. Like, it is so prevalent in this film. I lost my mind how many times he brought it up. So it's like, I like Harrison Ford. I don't even think he did bad at acting this character, even with how old he is, right? He did great. The problem was that he was given a bad script and he was told to say things right after people said other things, going back to what I said earlier. And then also he was just telling everyone, oh my goodness, I would really like to see Arwen and I can't see Arwen and it's ruining me. I need to prove myself to her by creating this treaty, which it's like, I kind of see it, but I'm also kind of like, how does a treaty make your daughter go, oh my goodness, I love you again, let's hang out and have coffee? But, whatever, people have weird ideas. I just think his motivations were just a jumbled kind of mess based off of the script, and I just didn't buy it.
I will say, the script of this movie was abysmal, in my opinion.
Mhm.
I think I like there were moments in this movie where I was going, what am I watching right now? Like, so much of the dialogue between Joaquin Torres and Sam Wilson and Isaiah Bradley was like, what are we doing? Like, where there's like the airdrop scene. I was like, why is this a part of this movie? We're just trying to show that Bradley is old?
Yeah, it was supposed to be funny.
It wasn't.
That was a thing. It was like there was multiple scenes like that with the Isaiah Bradley, right? In the airdrop scene where you go, oh, this is a funny scene. Guess what? In the theater, no one laughed. And the theater was full.
Yeah.
Their script was garbage. It was not funny. It was not entertaining. It was not worth its time. At all. Which is why I gave it a 0.9.
So I don't disagree the movie was a jumbled mess. I think there was a lot of things they were trying to do at once that were terrible, and they did a lot of things poorly.
Sure, and I want you to push back like this, Avalon. Was all I'm saying.
But I seriously, when you say that he says it a lot through the movie, I seriously don't remember that at all. I remember the news media, the news reports, like people on the news like mocking him and like bringing it up a lot. But I only remember like 2 scenes where he brought it up himself personally to others. You see him looking at pictures of his daughter in certain scenes as well. Mm-hmm. But I don't remember like him bringing it up as much as you claim he's bringing it up, which is, and I don't know. I guess I'm just like, when you say that, I'm not sure I agree with that, just because I don't remember that.
Sure, and that's perfectly fine. And if you disagree as the audience, leave us a comment down below. Plug number 2. All right, we're moving on because I don't actually care about that. Do you guys done with Thaddeus Ross? I'm done with Thaddeus Ross. I feel like we've really beat it to a pulp.
No, I think there's nothing more to say about him.
What are you guys' thoughts on the end with Thaddeus Ross?
The only other thing, I would like your thoughts of one other part of the movie which we did talk about, and that's because it's in the 9-point system, and that's the big revelation. Mm-hmm. Because I think something was supposed to be a big revelation, but it was spoiled to me before I watched the movie, so it wasn't a big revelation to me. So I feel like my perception on that, I couldn't actually give an honest review on that point.
So what did you think the big revelation was? Samuel Stearns?
I think it was supposed... Yeah, I think Samuel Stearns was supposed to be the big revelation, because we're not revealed his character until the midpoint of the movie, and he's like, oh, it's this character from The Incredible Hulk. He's come back, and he has a grudge against everyone. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it's supposed to be this hyped-up moment. Unfortunately, it was spoiled for me, so I knew who he was in the movie, and I knew what was going to happen. So when all these things started happening, I was like, oh, I already know who this is. Like, story-wise, I see what they were trying to do, but it didn't work for me personally, because it was... mostly because I had prior knowledge.
So
because someone said something.
As a matter of fact, I actually did go into depth on this specific point. I just didn't bring it up when we talked about Samuel Stearns. There's 2 reasons why I think this is the case, that was ineffective. One, this was a callback from a movie from over a decade ago, right? And if you want it to be this thing that's like a big revelation, Newsflash, 90% of people who watch this film are not going to know that this is supposed to be a big revelation about a previously existing character. I didn't know that originally. I had to go back and realize, oh, this is a character that actually existed, right? So I think most people that go there, it's like, oh my goodness, Samuel Stearns is in the movie. 90% of people are going, who the heck is Samuel Stearns? I guess he's just a new bad guy in this movie. Okay, wow, why do I care so much about him being in this movie? I don't. He's just a bad guy. So that's the first thing, right? The second thing is that they were treating it like a mystery movie, and that was what they were trying to build up. This idea that, like, oh, who is the guy? What is this cat and mouse game kind of thing that's going on? Except it really wasn't a mystery movie. It's an action movie. And you see this by the fact that when you get that revelation that it is Samuel Stearns, this kind of goes back to what Andrew was saying, but you don't get a payoff, right? You see him say, now I have to cut out a variable, and then shuts a door, and then they can just open that door right away and get right back to it, right? So when we talk about revelations, it's like, how does this revelation have a meaningful impact to what is going on, right? And we've talked about bad revelations, good revelations, revelations that could be bad that turn out to be good in later films, right? Foreshadowing, if you want to look at Dune 2, we talk about that a lot. But in this case, it was kind of like a revelation of, oh, this character that you might not know even existed reappears in this film. Wow. And you're like, wow, he is a bad mastermind. I don't really care. This doesn't affect how the plot was progressing at this point. It doesn't affect it much anymore going forward because your plan is to make him angry, and that's going to happen regardless, basically, of whether or not he takes the pills. So, I don't know. I know it was an attempt. I kind of wanted to respect it. I didn't because I felt like I gave it extra points in other areas of the review, so I just didn't give it points. But I could see where you're coming with that. Okay, that's all I wanted to say. And that's my analysis. Andrew, do you have any other thoughts? You want to push back on that? Like,
I think there are a few reasons because there's two revelations in this movie, really, and I don't think either of them function truly as revelations, but they're meant to be in its narrative sense. Red Hulk being Thaddeus Ross, but that was given away in the trailer,
right?
And then Stearns being the leader. I think the problem with Stearns being the leader, you hit the nail on the head when you said it happened a decade ago, right? No one's going to know what's going on here. I think what they needed to do was make a second Hulk movie and have him be in that movie. But secondarily, in order to make the leader be an actual revelation, like this character, Samuel Stearns being the villain, they needed someone who interacted with him in the Hulk movie to be the person to uncover this. It couldn't be Sam Wilson because Sam Wilson doesn't know who the actual heck this character is. He has no concept of who Samuel Stearns is. So when he finds out that he's been there, it's just like it could have been the Joe Schmo off the street. It wouldn't have mattered.
Right. Exactly.
If it had been Mark Ruffalo's Hulk who had discovered this, now we have someone who can actually feel the weight of this, and we as the audience can then take that in and actually experience that sort of like shock factor with the character. Or even if it had been Betty Ross's character who had discovered this, then it would have been, boom, shock factor. And it would have also helped to kind of move along the plot of like, oh, Thunderbolt Ross is trying to do better, but it turns out he's had this guy locked up. That's not really going to help his relationship with his daughter now, is it? And so it's like, you needed something there. And I will also say, going into this movie, knowing Red Hulk was going to be in it, I thought to myself, it'd be really funny is if that guy Samuel Stearns ended up being in this movie, or if Abomination ended up being in this movie. And so the second that I saw the green eyes, I went, oh, okay, cool. So he's the character. And I went, they're going to absolutely butcher his character, aren't they? And what do you know? They did.
Right.
So,
well, yeah, and
I didn't give this points like a movie like any points for a revelation, because I think just going into it not actually knowing that Samuel Stearns was going to be in it as an audience member, it wasn't. I don't think that the people in the movie experienced any sort of revelation or shock. No one in the audience did either. Whether it was because they had no idea who the heck this character was, or even if they did, it just wasn't played out very well.
Right. Well, this is where, when you talk about revelations, right? What's the stereotypical revelation? The stereotypical revelation is someone on the hero's side is actually working for the enemy, right? And that is a significant revelation. Why? Because, one, they're an ally. So you traditionally think of them as an asset to the hero, not a liability, right? Secondarily, it changes the whole dynamic. This means that all of the things that you have just watched have to be interpreted in a new light, because that means some of the things they were doing were actually meant to cause sabotage rather than help the hero that we just saw do all of these different actions. So this is kind of how you have to think about it when it comes to, as much as you don't really want to just see that played out stereotypically, because then you're going to predict it, right? What's the point of a revelation if you can just predict everything? But the idea with revelation is that it helps to add that suspense and drama by building unexpected things into the plot. And that's what you're looking for, is one, something you didn't expect, and two, something that tangibly affects the plot in a meaningful way. One, we didn't know what to expect because we didn't know who Samuel Stearns was. He was from 15 years ago or whatever, right? And then two, it's like at the end of the day,
17 now.
At the end of the day, he was, as we talked about, didn't pay off as a villain, which is a whole separate thing about Samuel Stearns.
Yeah. And what I will say is a plot twist doesn't necessarily need to be something that's completely unpredictable. Because, like, watching Attack on Titan, I predicted a lot of stuff that happened. I still very much enjoyed the plot twist of that show.
I can't believe you're going into this.
There's a lot there that if you can, just because you can predict the plot twist doesn't mean that the twist itself is necessarily bad. I just wanted to point that out because there are sometimes twists in movies where it's like you can see it coming probably. It doesn't mean that you as the audience are left feeling unsatisfied by the end of the movie.
Sure. And to do that effectively, and this is, once again, going into the dynamics of the film, right? How do you make a good film? How do you make it meaningful? Oftentimes, that is both predictable but also satisfying because it goes into themes and values that the film is trying to display, right?
Yeah.
And so even though you kind of see it coming, you're still okay with it because at the end of the day, Aaron Yeager was, preaching this message all along. And I'm not going to say it anymore because it's going to spoil it.
Yeah. But the thing is it builds upon the story itself. And
Right.
You also have the characters in that story reacting to it in such a way that it is a twist. And so it's just like the idea of show, don't tell. You show that this is a twist by the characters in that movie reacting a certain way, rather than you just being, oh, boom, there's a character. You psych. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Revelation. I feel like we can move on though.
Well, if you want to push back, because you didn't really have any.
No, so I'll be honest. I liked some things they did with the setup.
Sure.
I mean, like there are certain things they did, and especially. But the thing is, I just also felt like because I knew ahead of time that Samuel Stearns was going to be in this movie, and because I already knew who Samuel Stearns is as the leader from the comics, and I had all this foreknowledge, none of this took me by surprise. And when it came to this point of the review, I legitimately didn't know where to rate it because I didn't want to be unfair and say 0 points. But at the same time, I was like, well, at the same time, should I be giving it full points here? Because I don't know how other people responded, and I don't know what my response should have been because I knew what was happening, what was coming. So, my review, that part of my review, I put points down, but I was willing to change. I'm quite ready to change it because I don't know what I I legitimately don't feel like that part of my review would be fair regardless of what I put on it.
Yeah, and that's a fair way to come at it, right? I think especially for big revelations, you want to give it some grace if you get some heads up. Let's talk about the ending of the film. What are you guys' thoughts on how they resolved the conflict? How we have Thaddeus Ross in jail and how he sees the pedal in his hand and goes, you know what? You're right. I should turn back into a human again. What are your thoughts, guys? Let's start with Avalon because I like his counter. As much as we're like, I'm coming at you, Avalon, I love that you're coming at it with a positive note, and I feel like it adds to good discussion. So.
Well, I mean, to be honest, I think the ending, especially that particular part of the movie, the ending between where he turns back into Ross, it just reemphasizes the Thaddeus Ross's character arc in the whole movie. It just establishes what he's been going through, what he's been struggling with, and him, it's just reemphasizes that he does want to change, and that he is like willing to fight to change, but he's not a perfect man, and he still has flaws. So at the end of the day, I liked how they ended it, especially regarding to Ross's character. And then the whole scene of the raft, I particularly liked that his daughter shows up to him in the scene in the raft, because it, especially after the fact that he was the Hulk, because it's like, it just shows like there's more meaning and weight behind it, because she knows everything now at this point. And the fact that she still comes to see him at the raft after all these years, it kind of just, it's like a satisfying end to that particular character arc, to that particular part of the story.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like that part of this movie. I really liked everything else in the movie. I mean, it just depends on what you take on, like Isaiah Bradley, on Sam Wilson, on Joaquin Torres. Like, it's a jumble of a mess. And I mean, this movie went through so many reshoots apparently, and
at least 3.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's clear that even the director didn't know what to take of certain scenes in the movie.
And wasn't there like 5 guys that wrote this?
Yes.
Well, there was 6.
Yeah,
it was 5
I think
guys
Marvel
that
just didn't know what to do with this movie, really.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a mess. A large section of this movie is a mess. Now, that being said, there were things I enjoyed about this movie, and I'll say I wasn't bored watching this movie. My time in the theater, I was like, oh, this was an interesting experience for me. Like, and I also came in with really low expectations, so that probably helped.
Yeah, for sure.
So
that definitely does help.
So now I admit I probably am giving this movie probably more points than it deserves in some regards, but I'm also not, probably my review at the end is probably still going to be like a 4. I'm probably not going to be less than that.
Sure, and
like,
that's fair.
So,
so
I mean, that's not a good score, but it's something, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's below middle of the road. It's like below average, but not terrible. Versus mine, which is like,
so
you're garbage.
And the reality is, I thought this, like, the things in this movie they did well. I think they did those things, like, lift this movie above some of the recent stuff Marvel has done. Because I'm not a fan of a lot of the stuff Marvel has done recently in the last few years. So I think those things, like, make this movie slightly better.
Sure. And
doesn't make it better. I don't think it's as good as Endgame or even, like, some of the Marvel movies before that. But I still think it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, and I'm curious about that, because that's a very interesting note to make. What about it makes you think that this is a stand above some of the other content they put out recently?
Because recently, it's all about the action, it's about the messaging, it's about, like, they get so caught up in what they're trying to do and, like, leading up to the next big thing that it's almost like they get caught up in the whole, like, oh, this is an expanded universe, and this is coming around the corner, and they don't even think about, oh, no, this is what's in front of us right now, right here. Like, every single, like, show, movie, and, like, whatever, it's like, they get so caught up in all these, like, other things that what's happening on the screen in front of you almost doesn't matter in a certain sense. Whereas, like, that's my problem with a lot of the recent Marvel stuff. In this movie, while a lot of that stuff there's a lot of that still in it, the whole thing between Ross, his character arc, and Betty, like, that almost that's a standout part of this whole movie, because it's like, this is happening here right now. This is a character going through a character change right now. This is a human person struggling and trying to do better. Like, that's why I think it stands up of everything else, because this is something human and something that's relatable, that everyone can, like, on a certain level, like, they can understand and empathize with.
You're saying that, like, the Thaddeus Ross arc is specifically adds value in regards to themes, messaging, character arcs, and all that kind of stuff, which is unique compared to other recent films.
Yes, compared to recent Marvel films specifically, but that is what I was saying. And I will say, as I said, I don't think it's as good as some of the first Marvel movies. There's definitely way better Marvel movies out there. But this is a step, I feel like it's a step in the right direction. Now, will they continue with that? I don't know.
Sure, sure. Andrew, what are your thoughts?
I think this movie was just their way of resetting up the Avengers, honestly. I think this movie was just their The Boys season 4. It is just their in-between movie, right? I think this is just their way of introducing adamantium, which they're going to use to introduce Wolverine and the X-Men, and then they need to bring back the Avengers. Like, this is just their way of vamping up for Avengers Doomsday. And they also wanted to throw Red Hulk in there. And I think that they accomplished both of those goals. Unfortunately, the movie suffered because they weren't focused on the actual plot of this movie. They were focused on what comes after.
Yeah, and you see that with several of the Marvel movies going to when you saw all of the Kang the Conquerors in that Colosseum, right? And then they shot themselves in the foot when, wait, we're not going down this avenue anymore because this guy's got an actual court case against him. So yeah, they've always been so caught up in the future that they don't do well with the present. It seems like a theme with their recent films.
Mhm.
But go ahead,
I just want to say the end credit scene did piss me off though, because I was like,
Okay,
that end credit scene, I was just like, we knew this already.
Oh,
Crying out
yes.
I looked at this like, we knew about this from Loki, Ant-Man 3, we knew about this from Doctor Strange 2, we even knew about this from WandaVision. I was just like, what was the point of this? Like, that was like,
okay,
this end credit scene should have been around like 5 years ago.
okay.
This was
So
a pointless end credit scene.
I'm going to reveal something.
But the end credit scene is not part of the movie, so I did not. I
Sure,
just
sure.
ignored it completely
Yeah.
for my review.
Yeah. I'm gonna cut this out, right? I didn't actually watch the end credit scene. I was not going to waste my time. I walked out of the theater. What even
Okay.
happened?
Essentially, it shows Samuel Stearns in the raft, like he's in prison now. Sam Wilson goes to visit him, essentially saying, "You lost your bet. Like nothing like bad. Like essentially, like kind of almost like a gloating scene over Samuel Stearns." And Samuel Stearns is like, "Oh, you think this is like the only world out there?" Essentially, he alludes to the multiverse and the fact that Secret Wars is coming in Avengers like 5 or 6 or something. Essentially, that is what he's relating. Like, there's gonna be a huge conflict between worlds and universes coming soon, and it just was like, this was pointless. Like, we already knew this was coming because of Ant-Man 3. We already knew this was coming because of Loki Season 2. And, like, this was, like, there's, like, information in this end credit scene that just was, like, what? Like an end credit scene is supposed to, in my mind, okay, slight tangent, but end credit scenes are supposed to reveal something we did not know before or allude to some future conflict in a future movie that's, like, should get the audiences pumped up. Get them excited for the next thing. It's, like, it's a promotional tactic is what it is.
Right.
And so it's like when an end credit scene flubs that and it just like doesn't show us anything new or doesn't like show us something like, oh, to get excited about the next movie. It's just like, what was the point? Like, I got pissed off at the Mario movie because of the end credit scene, because like, this was nothing new. We had this in the movie. Why did you show us this?
Yeah. Well, the thing is it's like,
I just was like,
why?
I got pissed off.
Well, the thing that, you know what pissed me off even more is that the end credit scene wasn't after the initial credits. It was at the very end of the credits. So I sat through the whole thing to learn jack squat. Whereas the end credit scenes, guess what? Sonic 3 did it better than this movie. You actually got something. I was hyped for that end credit scene.
Dude, like, that's so funny that like Sonic the Hedgehog, Amy is not like a favorite character of mine, but that end credit scene for Sonic 3 is like, dude, I'm down for this.
Yo, I never gave a crap about Amy, but boy, am I here for this next movie.
Dude, now I'm interested.
Oh, I want to see this romance play out now.
And
This
Maverick
was-
he's like, no clue. And now he's just like, what is going on?
This is not supposed to be a Sonic 3 review. This is supposed to be a Captain America
We're not
Brave
gonna
New
review Sonic
World.
3 here. I don't
But
think
Sonic
we
3
are.
is so much better. Solid 10 out of 10.
Okay, alright.
Anyways,
The sad thing is that's probably the better movies we've seen recently.
true. We just got to see Mickey 17.
Yeah.
Anyways, going on to like what we thought about the end of this movie.
Sorry, Maverick.
Yeah, you know,
Fine.
tangents. There's a couple of things that I think are going. I have a prediction for what will happen after this movie.
I don't care.
Okay.
We're not talking about that.
You're talking about the end of the movie, and like I
just
thought we were
want the
taking
end.
takeaways.
What is your review of this film?
I already said
get
what
to
my
takeaways
review
in a-
was.
Sorry,
Okay.
like and thoughts. Sorry, the
Oh,
final
and
conflict.
thoughts. They resolved it. I think the thing that felt very underwhelming about this is the fight at the end. Underwhelming fight, right? Red Hulk is not really made out to be this big threat, other than the fact that he rips off Falcon's wing. And I think that shows how inadequate Falcon is as Captain America, because he doesn't. It's not the shield that makes him Captain America, it's its wings.
Yeah.
And guess what? The wings are what make Falcon Falcon, not Captain America. And it's like he's useless without the wings. He can't use the shield effectively. Mm-hmm. He tries to, and guess what? Red Hulk goes, nope. And that's that. And so the fight, I think, was underwhelming. It was over and done with in an instant. There was no epic fight, really. It was just Sam getting pummeled. Whereas at least with Thor Ragnarok, it was an epic fight with Hulk and Thor. Mm-hmm. And then as soon as the fight's over, movie's done. It was just they just wrapped everything up. It was like Game of Thrones season 8 all over again. They just closed it all up because they got what they needed to done. They had the fight. The fight was what the movie was for. The fight's over. Let's wrap everything else up and get out of here. At least that's sort of what it felt like to me as the audience, was we're just going to close everything down right now.
Sure. I mean, to play the devil's advocate, going back to what Avalon said, right? You get the idea that this character development was completed by the end of this arc by seeing him, I guess, shrink down into a normal human being from being the Red Hulk through this whole scenario as he realizes, oh, this is where me and my daughter used to walk type scenario, right? And my personal impression of that was that they fulfilled that arc well. The side character got a complete arc. The main character, whatever, we're just going to ignore him, right? Whatever. And then you get the, everything else just kind of goes on from there on out. But I didn't love it. It was predictable, which is not a huge problem in my mind for an ending of a film. It's okay, it happened. I knew it was going to happen. I knew it was going to happen in this way because you were foreshadowing it so hard from the beginning of the film. But, it was what we wanted to see. We got it. I was okay with it. The fact that it was a side character really did kind of annoy me because it's why wasn't it the main character?
Because no one wants to go see a Thaddeus Ross movie.
Yeah, exactly. This was a Thaddeus Ross movie, not a Captain America movie.
It doesn't even become a Hulk movie till the very end.
Yeah. So, anyways, I want to talk about lasting impact.
That's what this review is. It's a Hulk movie disguised as a Captain America movie.
Oh yeah, it is.
New title.
They're just building up to a new Hulk movie, and it's gonna have She-Hulk and Red Hulk and Red She-Hulk and Hulk and Scar. And guess what? The next Captain America movie is gonna have Betty Ross hulking out, guys. Hopefully, she doesn't start twerking like She-Hulk did.
Okay. So, anyways,
lasting impact.
I really want to talk about lasting impact. But before we talk about that, I feel it is important to talk about, is there anything about the setting you guys want to note?
The Marvel setting, the MCU, is a very convoluted place to begin with. There's so much that gets introduced every movie and things that get forgotten. I didn't see anything that broke the movie for me personally, as far as setting wise. So me personally, there was nothing about the setting of this movie that tore me out of the movie. Okay. If that makes sense. So
sure.
For me, most Marvel movies, I don't really have a major issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is more of an issue than it should be for me because it's personally something that I like, a character I like. But the introduction of Bucky in this movie really threw me. It legitimately pulled me out of... It pulled me out of what this movie was trying to convey. Because you think about it, right? One, what did Bucky accomplish in this movie? He did absolutely nothing. He showed up and gave a motivational speech, and then immediately all of that he built up gets thrown away by Sam saying, wow, did your speechwriters give you that? Yeah, they did. Just ignore everything I just said, pretty much. And then he leaves. And it's the 2 minutes he was there pulled me out of the movie. One, since when is he on the campaign trail to be a congressman? What on earth? What
setting
is
of Thunderbolts, probably.
Well, yes, obviously, but it's just it came out of holy crap nowhere. What on earth?
Right.
And it's one, I didn't like it because it didn't add to Sam Wilson's story. It was it's a cameo because they wanted to have a cameo, and it makes sense to have Bucky there. but it did nothing for Sam Wilson. It does nothing for this movie. We didn't need it to be there. If it needs to be there for Thunderbolts, we could just open the movie by us finding out that he's been on the campaign trail. We didn't need it there. Secondly, it takes what could have been an impactful moment for Sam and completely negates it by saying, oh, your speechwriters gave that to you. Didn't need that there. If anything, it actually hurts Sam's character in this movie. And then finally, I just hate what they did to Bucky's character in this movie. And as someone who absolutely loves the Winter Soldier, it drove me insane. So I hated it from a storytelling perspective, and I especially hated it because they took my man and they turned him into a senator who is a brown noser.
I'm gonna be honest. I kind of just took that scene, didn't think much of it. I'm not gonna analyze the Winter Soldier out to a.
I don't expect
degree.
either of you to be as pissed off as I was. I
Sure.
just needed to get that out.
I'm glad that you got your
I had
therapist
a
session.
feeling you were going to say something about that scene, but I didn't. Personally, I didn't care much about that scene.
Yeah.
Just,
I thought it was a cameo, and they were trying to get people who like Winter Soldier, like yourself, to really get hyped up. Instead, they got you pissed off.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm kind of glad and also somewhat questioning myself to see that none of you guys had huge problems necessarily with the overall way this played out. Because here's the scenario we're given, right? The scenario we're given is that both Joaquin Torres and Sam Wilson are normal human beings. They don't have the superhero serum. They're just everyday dudes with cool tech, doing their lives. I personally felt like there were multiple scenarios where these guys just beat the crap out of other dudes who were probably better trained than them because they were actually in the military and just got away scot-free from this, right? And that happens first in the bunker, but then also in other situations where you have, let's just say, let me just take my wing, touch this bomb, and blow it up. Now, if you know about bombs, the very basic idea is that they explode like outward. So how come the shrapnel doesn't hit the person that blew it up because they're clearly close enough to touch it with their wing? And then in addition, right, but then it does blow up and then hurt my friend who shoots it nearby as well, with his little gadgets as he falls into the ocean and then goes to the hospital. So there was like multiple times in this movie where I personally felt like it didn't make a lot of sense. For example, the vibranium wings being able to send this shockwave out. I spent an inordinate amount of time in the theater thinking, how the heck does this shockwave in the wings work? Because it doesn't send it out one way, doesn't send it out both ways. If it sends it out both ways, why isn't he dead? Because it sent a shockwave in a contained area, but then it sends a shockwave both ways when he attacks the Red Hulk. But it sends a shockwave. I don't know. I was like overthinking this to the nth degree, but there was multiple scenarios where I thought
I can answer this question.
Okay, please do, please.
And I literally, actually, you know what? I actually technically already did. This is the MCU. The reality is, we've been exposed to this so much in the last few movies. Like, anyone who's seen this movie has seen other Marvel movies. At this point, we're not completely sure as an audience who's a superpowered individual and who's just got technology. And the reality is like, we haven't been given a basis to doubt this in prior movies. It's been set up to this point as audience members, where like, because this is the MCU, you almost have to suspend disbelief on this point. I understand what you're saying, but because this is the Marvel universe we're talking about, the reality is we just have to suspend our disbelief as like regular audience members.
We're just
So
expected.
if this was a different movie, if this was a different universe, I completely agree with you. But because this is the Marvel universe we're talking about, I almost have to say, well, I mean, they've done this before in other movies, and I mean, so now to be perfectly fair, I don't give the Marvel movies full points on setting because I said it's a convoluted mess. I give it middle of the road points, just to be clear.
Okay, that's fair.
They kind of play it off with Sam by saying, oh, he's been trained with Captain America, he's been trained with Isaiah Bradley, and then there's multiple moments where he goes, oh, I should have taken the serum. I mean, as far as the vibranium wings go, they kind of explored that idea in the Black Panther movie where Shuri gives him a suit and it's able to store like energy in the suit with each hit, and then he can use it as like a blast.
Right.
So that the vibranium wings I didn't have a problem with, considering they've already explained that in prior movies. The thing with Falcon being Captain America, though, and this is a complaint I have with just Falcon being Captain America in general, is his ability to wield the shield effectively. And there are moments in that movie that genuinely I had me tweaking, where like he takes it, throws it, does a backflip, and like kicks it, and I'm like, brother, what is this? I didn't even see Steve Rogers do that crap. What on earth? And like they do it a little bit better in the Falcon Winter Soldier TV show, where like he's struggling to use it, but like even in Avengers Age of Ultron, they have Hawkeye pick up the shield. And Hawkeye is like an expert in all sorts of weapons. And he is just able to just lug the shield up to Steve. Like it may be light for Steve Rogers, but he's a super soldier. And he can throw that thing with precision and force because he's a super soldier. And the implication is that it doesn't matter how much you train with that thing. You have to be a super-powered human to wield that with deadly precision. Whereas Falcon is like, I'm just going to do exactly what Steve Rogers did, which in my mind takes away from Captain America having the serum. What makes the serum so special if Falcon is able to replicate everything Steve did without ever taking the serum? And so that, again, I have so many complaints with Falcon's version of Captain America, but we'd be here all day if I kept going over them.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And I think that's a fair point to make. I think maybe we got too caught up in setting, so I apologize a little bit for that. It was just a personal peeve of mine for this particular film. Maybe I got caught up in it specifically because I know that Sam Wilson doesn't have superpowers technically, and so he shouldn't be more powerful than other humans. And forgot that I'm watching an MCU movie. But
the other thing is that they try to tout him as being like the TV show and the movie keep pushing this idea that you shouldn't take the serum. Don't take the serum. Be special because of being who you are. And then you have the line from Bucky where he's like, Captain Steve gave that inspired them. You gave them something to aspire to. And it's like, you're just a normal guy. And they keep pushing this narrative, but it's the idea of show don't tell, and they're failing by just telling the audience he's a normal guy. But then in every scene, he is so not a normal guy.
Right.
So, not a good Captain America.
Well, let's talk about the lasting impact of that Captain America. Andrew.
I think they're bringing Chris Evans back. I don't think that they will stick with Sam Wilson for a couple of reasons. One, I think that they're going to try to do Avengers Doomsday. And I think it's pretty obvious at this point they're bringing back Chris Evans. Whether it's for an evil Captain America or not, it's obvious that Chris Evans isn't done acting in the MCU. And I think that's primarily because all of the projects he's had following Endgame haven't been great for him. He has still a lot of time left in his acting career. I think what happened was he had kind of this sort of like doldrum. Like it just kind of hit a lull for him, where he'd been acting as Captain America for a while. He was like, I want to put this to bed. And he's even expressed in interviews at this point, like, yeah, I actually loved playing the character of Captain America. That, I think, is like this amazing role for me. And I think, of course, he's not going to admit to it, but I suspect they'll probably bring him back. This movie is not going to do that well for them. I haven't looked at the numbers yet, but I suspect it's not doing amazing. And I think that they can keep Sam as Captain America. I just don't think it's going to be that effective. And I think if they really do want to bring back the Avengers in its heyday, Captain America is the type of character that just makes sense for them to have around. Like Iron Man made sense, right? He's a normal guy. He ages. He dies. Captain America, Wolverine are these characters that don't really age, and it makes sense for them to keep around for a while. Even if they just they might bring in a different actor. I think they're bringing Steve Rogers back. Whether that be in a different iteration. And I think what's going to happen probably is Doomsday and Secret Wars is going to fundamentally change the way that we see the MCU. And it's going to be almost like a hard reset.
I was just looking up IMDb just to see what the box office draw
I was doing that right now
weekend
too.
was. And it's 88 million according to IMDb.
How much money did they
So I
spend?
don't know what
180,
I don't know how much they spent.
192 technically, depending on what the source you use. So it's
Okay.
about a little less than half of what it cost
So
is what they spent on
Okay.
it. So as of
Okay.
now, it's a huge loss. Now that being said, they could make that up through international sales and through
Mhm.
future weeks. It is the first weekend, so that will
Yeah.
trickle in. But the first weekend should be the most significant and add a majority of the funds they use to make up for the cost of the
Yeah.
film.
Well,
So-
I do know that they were
Yeah.
trying to sell like tickets, like pre-sale tickets before the movie came out, and they were barely making any money off of that. And I do know that. I'm assuming people like probably what happened is weekend of people were like, oh, let's go see a movie, and that happened to be one of the movies in theaters. It's also a Marvel movie, so people went to see it. But I know pre-sale tickets weren't making them a ton of money.
Or someone kept saying, "Why don't we review this film like 3 times?" And I said, "Fine."
Well, if we're doing all the Marvel movies, why not do one that just came out?
It's fine. We're here.
Yeah.
So, anyways, what do you think about the long-term impacts, Avalon?
This movie is trying to replicate something the first three movies did, and it doesn't do it very well. It does do some things better than some other current Marvel projects do, but it's not like, if we're going to compare it to the original Captain America movies, it doesn't measure up in the same way. And it's definitely I seriously doubt people are going to be talking about this movie years from now, unless they talk about it in a negative sense compared to the other movies. There is nothing, like, as a whole, this movie doesn't have a whole lot to contribute to society as a whole. I mean, like, maybe spark some discussions about some ideas, but as a whole, I don't see this lasting super long in the public consciousness. So I could be wrong, but that's just my take.
No, I mean, honestly, I pretty much agree with that, so I'm not going to add anything to it. So we're just on the rating. What do you guys thought? Are you going to change your rating?
I'm probably bringing it
I
down to
kind of
a
already
1.
said what my rating would change to. It's like because I gave it a 5.2. I think, admittedly, some of those points came from other things. I said I'd drop it to a 4, but I probably won't drop it more than that. So
I'm just going to round it out to a 1.
So you brought it down?
Well, yeah, because I'm sitting here going,
wow, okay.
I'm thinking about it, and the more I think,
bro, I'll put it on a 1 too.
let's go. Because to be
1
honest,
point buddies.
I put it at a 1.7, right? And I was like, I need to be nice to this movie, okay? I can't be Andrew and just hate on this movie because I don't like Sam Wilson's Captain America. And then
Maverick gave you permission to hate on it.
Well, then I'm hearing Maverick's review and I'm going, no, I'm not racist. I am actually smart. And I knew this movie was trash.
You're gonna get us banned, bro.
Oh, crud. I feel bad for Maverick in the editing room.
No, I mean, it is true. It's just straight facts. So.
I would like to say I love Black Panther. I think he's a phenomenal character. Rest in peace, Chadwick Boseman.
Oh, man.
True facts right there.
True legend, by the way.
Yeah.
Absolutely goated. One of the best additions to the MCU post like the original 6 Avengers.
Mm-hmm.
We respect you.
That's it. That's the pod. We hope you all enjoy. We'll be back as we always are.
That's quite the way to end this
next
podcast.
week. We'll see you all then.